Have you gained some weight over the last few years and now try to cut carbs to get rid of some of that weight again? In this episode, I'm going to break down to you why carbs most likely have not been the reason why you gain weight and why cutting them out is also not a sustainable strategy, especially if you can't imagine the rest of your life to keep cutting carbs out of your daily food intake. So this whole low carb movement or belief that carbs are the enemy, that carbs are the reason why you gain weight is widely spread. And it's literally like all the executives, all the high performers that initially talked to me, it's probably like 90% of the common belief that carbs were the reason and they now have to cut them out to get rid of that weight again. Now, there's a few factors why I know this seems like a plausible conclusion, but I'm going to explain you exactly why that is not the case. So first of all, when we talk about carbs, we have to understand the full picture. So first of all, we have 3 macronutrients, right? Technically 4, technically 5 actually. So obviously we have the carbs, protein, fats, you heard of all of that before. Water is also technically a macronutrient, but irrelevant for that situation because it has 0 calories. And alcohol is kind of 1 too. Carbs and protein you don't have to remember this, but it's just for context. Carbs and proteins have around 4 calories per 1 gram. So 1 gram of protein, 1 grams of carbohydrates has 4 calories. Fats, on the other hand, have exactly 9.3 calories per 1 gram, and alcohol has 7. So we all can already see that per gram, food equated, per gram, fats and alcohol have more calories and more energy. And calories are the energy unit in how we describe the energetic value of our foods. And energy intake and energy balance is the fundamental principle when it comes to fat loss, body composition, and energy, essentially. So for you to lose weight, to lose fat, you have to, quote unquote, burn more calories than you consume. Or this is already where it starts a little bit with the wrong approach. You have to eat less calories. That's how it goes correctly. You have to eat less calories than you burn. This is the much more time efficient, more ROI driven type of approach. Now, if you eat, let's say you take 2 of the exact same diets and you take one and you cut out all the carbs that you have in there. Yes, you're going to cut out a ton of calories because you obviously have an amount of carbs in that. And through that, you create an energy deficit. But it's not because of the carbs. It's because you consume less total calories than you've been consuming before. You could do the same with fats. You could do the same with protein, although both of the other ones are like cutting out proteins, not a good idea. You probably have to increase protein if you're in a situation with some gain weight that you are today. And cutting out fats entirely is also not a good idea because you still need them for optimal health, optimal hormonal health, and lots of other factors. When it comes to a sustainable approach, you should not cut out food groups or macronutrients entirely because in the end, these are just macronutrients. They're not foods. Each food has a mix of carbohydrates. Some of the foods are more protein dominant. For example, like meats, certain milk products, eggs, egg whites, protein powders. These are all like heavily dominant in macronutrients, but they're almost never essentially only one macronutrient, except maybe for a very high isolated protein powder. Carbs, on the other hand, also, for example, what do you define as carbs? So most typical, things such as bread. Bread is probably the reason why you think, like the thing that you want to cut out first. Like bread is not 100% carbs. It has very little fat. It has some protein, usually around like 10 grams per 100 grams. It's not a relevant protein source, but it's definitely high dominant on the carbohydrate source in that sense. Now, again, yes, if bread has been a heavy part of your diet or any other carbohydrate, like if it's rice, if it's potatoes, or if you think you cut out carbs and you start cutting out pizza and you cut out the cookies and you cut out all the other typical convenience foods, the truth is, or chocolate, the truth is, yes, there are some carbs inside. In chocolate, for example, there are some carbs inside in forms of sugar. But for example, a chocolate bar is predominantly fats. And as we know, if it's 2/3 fats for chocolate bar now, and 1/3 carbs, roughly, depends, like roughly, let's say a 70% cacao chocolate, the majority of the calories you're cutting out from that food is fats. But in the most people's minds, they're like, oh yeah, I stopped eating carbs. I stopped eating chocolate because carbs are bad. No, you just stopped eating like calorie dense foods. So we have to, in general, what it makes sense is to cut down a little bit on highly energy dense foods. Highly energy dense foods is usually, almost never actually, only high carbohydrate foods. High energy dense foods are highly processed foods that have also a lot of fats with it. Pizza, yes, pizza has some carbs with it, the bread. But the majority of the calories from a pizza comes from the cheese that it's on. It's a lot of fats. Cookies that you're eating or the cake that you're eating, it's primarily the majority of the calories are coming from fat. So if you cut out these foods, which you consider as carbs, you're not cutting, yes, you cut out some carbs, but you essentially cut out a ton of calories, and especially a ton of calories coming from fats. Now, what are you going to do with this information? Like, but yeah, like, I mean, I have to stop eating, like you're saying to yourself, I have to stop eating all these bad foods. First of all, there is no such thing as bad foods. There are only bad eating patterns. This is very crucial for you to understand, because let's take, for example, me for an example. Sometimes people like look at me if I have a piece of cake after dinner in a restaurant. They're like, oh, but I thought you're healthy, and I thought like you shouldn't eat that and everything. Well, who do you think can tolerate more quote unquote bad foods? The person that doesn't have a balanced diet, thinks eating healthy, meaning eats like Caesar salads and only apples and starve yourself with broccoli and cutting out all bread, or the person that has a very balanced diet, high protein, high fiber, ticks off all the nutritional requirements, and then has every now and then a piece of cake. Who do you think of these two will be in the end healthier physically and metabolically? Well, clearly the one that has everything else sorted out and then has a little bit of the fun stuff. Because when it comes to nutrition, the really most important thing that you have to understand is you can have a direct comparison with your finances. Nutrition is like money. You can imagine you have a certain budget available for your days in terms of your calories, right? Like you have a certain salary, or let's say you have a spending limit on your credit card. Let's take the credit card for this example. Let's say your credit card, you can spend 2K per day. In this example, or let's say 2.5K, let's say 3K even, 3K. To put the exact comparison to calories. So let's say you can spend 3,000 calories per day and you're maintaining your budget. You're not overspending, so you're not getting into debt, and you're not underspending, so you could maybe start saving up. You're just staying at exactly where you are. You spend as much as you earn. This is exactly the same with your body. You spend as much as you earn, so to say. You're maintaining. If you want to lose fat, you probably have to start saving somewhere. What most people do wrong here is they go the route, instead of saving money, they try to earn more. But we all know to getting a raise or to earn more consistently takes a lot of effort. Yes, if you're an entrepreneur, it looks a little bit different, but let's say you're having a job. You usually get a salary increase every 6 months or maybe every year. And then pulling that into the fitness example, trying to burn more every single day, like going for a run for every day for 60 minutes. It's a lot of investment. It's a lot of time spent. And at some point you can't maintain that, because maybe it becomes a challenge from a timing perspective. Maybe it becomes a problem from a energy perspective, just like life. So for you to be able to accumulate some more budget, to save some more, which would be the equivalent to dropping fat, because you have to save calories somewhat, you have to adjust your spending somehow. And coming back to the example with like how much healthy foods you can tolerate is, if by the end of the day you earn 3K or you can spend 3K a day, if by the end of the day you paid your rent, you paid your taxes, you got groceries, you bought the cleaning equipment, you maybe got your wife a nice present, the kids are taken care of, like you tick all, like the car is paid, you tick all of these boxes, and by the end of it you maybe have $1,000 left, you maybe have 500 left or so. But if you're already taking care of anything else, spend it on some fun stuff. Because if now the equivalent to your taxes, to your rent, to all of that is you hit your protein, this is your rent. You hit your fiber, this is your, let's say, your taxes. You buy your wife a nice gift. Let's say these are your healthy fats to maintain hormonal health. And then like all the other things that are important from a healthy, balanced diet, you all taken care of this. And by the end of it, you maybe have a cookie, some chocolate, or whatever floats your boat, a beer, some wine. It's fine. It's not going to hurt you in any meaningful degree. And this is really important. What a lot of people like still don't understand is like they think I have to either go like one way or the highway, cut out everything entirely, or just stay like with either what they've been doing before. There's no like healthy middle ground. And this is so frustrating for me to see because they apply these same principles in every other aspect of their life, privately, in business, in their professional life, but somewhat in nutrition and health. It seems like the connection is not there. To come back to the carbs, like, okay, what should I do then? Should I not cut out carbs? What else should I do then? So the easiest thing that you can do before, I'll walk you through the exact process that I do actually with my clients, with my pay clients. I pay me a lot of money to like teach them that. And I give you that right now, like for free. Before I start telling them what to have less of and to like, quote unquote, like cut down possibly, is I tell them what to have more of. Because you only, if you say like, oh, I crave sweets in the evening, I always want to have something after dinner, I always snack something, this has more fundamental misalignments earlier in the day and because of certain nutrients that you're maybe not getting earlier in the day. What is the most typical thing that people undereat that I tell them to have more of? One for sure being protein. Starting off your day, your breakfast, having breakfast, first of all, fuck intermittent fasting. Sorry for my language, but cut that out. That's like for 95% of people, it's not a sustainable strategy. And especially if you want to hit your protein target for the day. If you only eat 2 meals a day, it's very difficult to hit enough protein with intermittent fasting, unless you eat like 300 grams of meat or more even per meal, which is, no, you actually have to eat more. You probably have to eat like 400 grams if you want to have a reasonable protein intake with 2 meals. And you have to do that for both meals every single day. Not sustainable, probably also not healthy. So not a sustainable strategy. Have 3 meals. Each of them needs to have a lean, high protein food, meaning things such as lean meat, preferably more white than red, some low fat dairy products could be such as like Greek yogurt, something like skim cheese could also be a thing. Egg whites or eggs in general, just make sure not too many whole eggs because they also like have a significant amount of source of fat in there. Not that the egg yolk is like anyway dangerous, but the egg white is the high protein thing. The egg yolk is the high fat thing. So having at least for breakfast, that's what I have everybody, no matter their height, their weight, nothing, minimum 40 grams of lean protein per day. If that's very difficult for you and you're not a big breakfast eater, supplement that with some protein, like with a protein shake. Very easy, very convenient. You can bring it anywhere. You can have it in your office. You can have it in your travel bag. You can bring it into the airplane. No problem, and you're sorted. Because if you start your day off with a high protein breakfast, you will mitigate these cravings later in the day and in the evening and after dinner almost automatically. Crazy thing, I know, but that's how our body works. Now, and you want to do that for every meal. Like honestly, if you're watching this, there's a high probability you're somewhere between 80 to 100, maybe 110, maybe 120 kilos, depends on it, but somewhere in here. In any case, you need to eat a minimum of 120 grams of protein per day if you want to lose fat in a sustainable way. So 120 grams per day, if you have 3 meals a day, that's 40 grams per meal. In some cases, I like to go a little bit higher up because protein also fills you up more. It has a thermogenic food, meaning it also burns a little bit of calories by just simply eating the food. So it doesn't only like make you feel fuller for longer, it also helps you not absorb as many energy, like calories, as you would do with other nutrients, for example. Crazy side fact, when you would compare, the protein aside, when you would compare fats and proteins with each other, when you would compare fats and carbs with each other, and ask the question, which one of these two in and of itself is more fattening? 90% of people will point to the carbs and think carbs are more fattening. But the truth is actually fats are more fattening because fats are molecularly structured much more similar to the fat that you're carrying. Body fat, dietary fat, there's probably like a big overlay because they're both triglycerides, some form of triglycerides. And for your body, it's a much more efficient process to break down dietary fat into body fat tissue. If you want to break down carbohydrates and then turn that into body fat tissue, that's a metabolically inefficient process. It has to go through multiple metabolic processes that for your body are not preferred because your body prefers to do like other things, to be honest, to keep you alive, keep you going, keep you performing at a high level. So utilizing carbs as storing body fat is not your body's preferred way. So if you eat a high fat diet in eating more calories than you would, if there are actually studies, they did studies on that where they overfed people by 500 calories per day, either 500 extra calories coming from fat or 500 calories coming from extra carbohydrates. And by the end of the trial, by the end of the study, the people who were overfed with the fats gained more total body fat. Yes, if you overeat in general, if it's with carbs, if it's protein, yes, you're going to start gaining fat because you're just like, you're spending more, quote unquote, than you earn. You're eating more than you burn in that situation. But when you put them in an isolated spectrum, fats are more fattening than carbs, period. Now, coming back to like the structure, how you would have it. Having more of which foods? Like I said, protein, 40 grams per meal is a general good rule of thumb wherever you are in your journey, minimum. Then afterwards, what should we also have more of, or what are people usually mostly deprived of? Fiber. Fiber is one of the most underrated and not enough talked about nutrients in the whole health and fitness space, where it's responsible for so many health promoting factors such as gut health, blood fat regulation, health marker regulation, cholesterol, insulin sensitivity, or on the other hand, like responsible for, if not having enough of it, creating more insulin resistance, which then leads to type 2 diabetes and all sorts of other problems such as metabolic syndrome. So having more fiber is a crucial thing. So if you would want to sum it up, what is like the core thing, like the easiest big bang action that you can do? Eat more protein, lean protein. Just a disclaimer, nuts are not a protein source. Cheese is not a protein source. Chickpeas are not a protein source. Yes, all of them have some sort of protein, but they're not a reliable protein source. Having more lean protein sources, like I mentioned earlier. Low-fat Greek yogurt, lean meats, also like vegetarian meat alternatives such as like planted chicken, for example, in Europe is like super popular. Really love the product. Very great innovation there. No health concerns at all. Actually, probably like more health promoting than some of the hormonally polluted, heavy metal polluted industrial meat that most people get. And everybody includes there because nobody only eats the grass-fed beef from the farmer next door. If you do, great for you, but most people don't, if they're being honest with themselves. Fish, sustainably farmed, obviously, eggs, egg whites, and there's also like lots of other reliable sources. Now, having already these two things, more protein, more fiber in your diet will already make a massive impact. You're going to feel fuller for longer. You're probably also already going to start eating less total calories because you just start eating more of the things that make you fuller quicker. So you start eating less of the stuff that made you fat in the first place. Very good thing to have. And then the rest is like really like what it comes more to like detail, like, you know, like it still matters. We're only talking about the nutrition aspect because obviously we could go way deeper also into training, into recovery, into neurophysiological protocols, nervous system regulation, stress management, like all the things that matter too. But right now we're focusing carbs, nutrients from that aspect. And that's like literally like 80% of your fat loss. If you want to lose fat, 85%, in some cases even 90%, will be the thing that you eat 3 times a day. Period. So high protein, high fiber. Now, what should we do with the carbs, right? In general, a common misconception is also like, I should avoid the carbs in the evening because in the carbs, they are more fattening and whatnot. This is also like an absolute myth and just like pulled by the hair because the truth is, I have the majority of my clients eat the majority of their carbohydrates for dinner and they lose fat week after week, get in great shape, have better transformations in a few months than they had in the decades before, and got a lot of guys that got in better shape at 50 than they were at 25. Crazy thing. And I have them eat the majority of their carbs in the evening. Why is that? While it is true that carbs can sometimes dip your energy a little bit, especially if you have too much of them because you don't know what regular portion sizes are and because you don't eat enough protein and you don't eat enough fiber. That's the first problem in itself, not the carbs, but because you don't have enough of the other things. It can be that if you eat too big of a portion, and I'm talking about, like a bowl of pasta or, just like, you know what I mean? Like if you can't stop eating the appetizers that they give you in the restaurant and you eat up eating the whole basket. Yeah. But it's not because it's carbs. It's just because you're eating too much food that needs to be digested. You have maybe a little bit and not enough fiber. So you have a little bit of a glucose spike. You fall down afterwards. You start craving more foods. But it's not because of the carbs primarily. It's because you didn't have the protein and the fiber, which would help you regulate blood sugar also at the same time. I'm dropping some value right here. Like I hope you take notes. This is like serious gold that you're getting right here. Just realizing right now. How should you do with the carbs? Generally, I wouldn't overthink it. Simple framework. For breakfast, have something really high protein, add some fruits in it. If you want to have a piece of bread with it, go have that. For lunch, also try to keep them a little bit on the lower side of things because we have that afternoon dip biologically engraved in us. This is the postprandial dip that is from millions of years engraved in our biological circadian rhythm, which is the clock that we have inside of us. And if you have that anyways, from a biological standpoint, if you eat food, if you fast, if you don't eat anything, if you eat healthy, if you're unhealthy, you always have a little bit of a dip. But obviously the food choices that you're having will accentuate that or mitigate that. And if you eat too many carbs on top of that, if you're sleep deprived at the same time, if you bang yourself up with caffeine and the caffeine rushes out of your system in the afternoon, that's a recipe for an energy crash. There you have it. That's why I try to keep breakfast and lunch on the leaner side of things. That doesn't mean you have to starve yourself. You can eat a lot of fiber-rich foods. You can eat a lot of high-protein foods. It makes you feel full. You're not missing out on anything. If you want to have a Sliggle snack after, like a piece of chocolate to your coffee or whatever, that's not the thing that's going to make or break the deal. And then if you have that all throughout the day, you have high energy all day, you're feeling energized, you're feeling mentally sharp, and because you're operating at a lean level. And then you have the rest in the evening, because carbs in the evening, because you also have your biggest meal in the evening, spaced out at least 3 hours before going to bed. What you want to do then is have the majority of your carbs. First of all, it's socially the easiest time to do, because usually, for breakfast, you maybe don't have a lot of time. You have to rush out of the house, maybe even have it on the way. For lunch, you're going to go, you maybe take something takeaway, or you eat it maybe even at your desk. Sometimes you probably have a business dinner or something like that. That's maybe a different story that maybe doesn't happen every single day. But usually in most situations, dinner is the time where you either socialize or you sit down with a table with your family, with your kids, and everybody wants to kind of eat the same thing. And that's where most people do it wrong. They think I have to eat differently. I have to eat my salad and my bland chicken breast, and I can't sustain it because obviously I have to watch my kids eating pasta, and then I want to finish their plate. Yeah. I mean, if that's the whole approach that you're doing, yeah, it's not going to work. But if you're setting it up like I just told you, and then in the evening have the majority of your carbs, still have high protein, still have high fiber, and then have your reasonable portion size of carbohydrates. And that can be even pasta, that can be bread, can be also things such as sweet potato, lentils, normal potatoes, quinoa, whatever floats your boat, whole grains preferably, will work just as fine. And the crazy thing is, on top of that, not only will make the whole thing feel much more sustainable, it will also help you rest quicker, fall asleep better, and help you stay asleep better. Because carbohydrates are part of the cascade of the melatonin production, especially if you consume it in the evening. And melatonin is the sleep hormone. There's a lot of other things that play into that, but it's in general not a bad idea. It's a bad idea to say you should avoid carbs in the evening, because I also have the majority of my food in the evening. Like I said, space it out at least 3 hours before you go to bed, because you don't want to have food close to bedtime, because it keeps your heart rate up and it keeps you digesting throughout the night. It doesn't give you quality sleep. You're not going to be as rested. The next day, You're still digesting throughout the night, maybe even digesting a little bit still in the morning. And then people say, I'm not hungry in the morning. I can't eat. I shouldn't have breakfast. Then they don't eat in the breakfast. They eat something for lunch. They get so hungry then throughout the day that they eat all of their food that they should have had a little bit earlier in the day, everything in the evening, and go through that vicious cycle again because they ate too much for dinner in totality, digest throughout the night, and that vicious cycle keeps going. They bash themselves up with caffeine in the morning, and everything is just like completely dysregulated. So this is going to be your actionable framework right now. High protein, 40 grams of total protein, not 40 grams protein source. So 40 grams of Greek yogurt is not going to give you 40 grams of protein. 40 grams of total protein. High fiber diet, meaning things as fruits, vegetables, and make sure that each plate, when you look at it, it has at least a fist-size minimum of a lean protein source. That's usually will give you around what is ideal for your size. So if I would have my fist, and this would actually, the fist would be filled with, I need a little bit more, obviously, because I have a little bit more muscle mass than the average person. But if you have like minimum, like a fist size, it will usually give you a minimum amount of protein that should be good for you. High fiber, fill your plate up with vegetables. There's no vegetable that is unhealthy. And then in the evening, have your carbs, right? Have everything on one plate so it's evenly distributed, so it looks like a nicely distributed plate. And then you can also like have a snacks here and there. If you eat like that, and 80% of that is whole foods, hyper-processed foods, like I said, single ingredient foods, nothing's going to happen to your health if you have like a pizza evening on Friday with your family, or you go out with the boys and you have like a beer or two or something like that. It's not going to throw you off. Not at all. It actually maybe like psychologically helps you make this feel sustainable and doable, and it keeps you in this for the long run. Because again, being 80% quote unquote perfect for 20 years will give you so much more than being 100% for 2 weeks, and then the rest of it, you're just going to throw it overboard again. If you want to see how this actionable, we just talked about the diet part and right, how to navigate carbs right now. There's so much more to be said, but like I said, this is just like the diet part, the carb part, the performance, nutrition, nutrient intake carb. That is one part of the whole code that you essentially have to apply to this whole journey. When you want to lose fat, you want to build muscle, you want to have great energy levels, you want to feel amazing in your skin, you want to increase your confidence and feel proud of the man in the mirror. If you want to see how we exactly do that, down below in the description, there's a link, thefithighperformer.com/code, where we can have a look at our exact 4-phase transformation system that's had a 98% success rate with hundreds of executives, helping them drop 5, 10, 15, 20 kilos in some situations without giving up on their social commitments, without giving up on their professional commitments. It doesn't overtake their calendar, doesn't take away family time. It actually gave them so much more back because they have more energy, they feel better, they're able to serve more, they're having their bosses recognize that, see that they're more resilient, more durable, better performance, get a promotion, start making more money. The relationship obviously also gets enhanced because who doesn't want to have a sexy husband or a sexy wife on the other hand? And everything else in your life will accelerate. So again, link is down below, thefithighperformer.com/code. You have the exact framework. You can also connect down below with me if you want. If you ask me some question, happy. Like I always keep my messages super personal. I always reply personally on my Instagram either or on my LinkedIn. I'm relatively responsive on both of them, and keep eating your carbs.